Hi, and welcome to Uncle Scott's Pancast podcast show, episode 7. You know, we were traveling for Thanksgiving, been away for a couple of weeks. We went to one of those classic Norman Rockwell traditional American Thanksgiving cities, Newark, New Jersey. You know, when we left the airport, my wife kept asking, "Can't you drive any faster?" Drove out actually into the countryside. If you've never spent much time in New Jersey, lots of us think that it's kind of a suburb of New York City, which part of it probably is. Some of my wife's family lives out in the countryside. Once you get out of the big cities, it's actually pretty rural and actually fairly scenic, believe it or not, New Jersey. For Thanksgiving week, we all plan to do a lot of cooking. The dish I chose to make was a bacon tart. Now, if you're a big fan of bacon and or open heart surgery, this may be the dish for you. Instead of using any kind of pastry, this dish uses bacon as the crust. Completely decadent. Not my original recipe, it came from Food and Wine magazine. If you go to the Google, after you watch this video, go to the Google, type in food, wine, bacon tart. It'll take you right to the recipe. And the reason I bring it up for the Pancast is that the recipe calls for this dish to be made in a 10-inch cast iron skillet. When we got to New Jersey, they actually had a 12-inch cast iron skillet, but they didn't have a 10-inch. So if there's one thing I'm good at in this entire world, it's getting online and ordering a brand new frying pan. Got online, ordered a new one, a 10-inch Lodge, only about 14 bucks. Now how they make these things for $14, ship them across the country, pay some guy to drive one out to me on a truck, no shipping charges, and they still make money. I don't know how they do it, but somehow they do. I'm glad they do. We got that in, and I started to cook the bacon tart in there. But the reason I bring this up is that I've had people tell me that the new Lodge pans have a rougher surface than some of the older Lodge pans. This came up a time or two after I reviewed that Amazon Basics cast iron skillet, kind of a competitor to the Lodge. So when this new one came in, I kind of took it as an opportunity to examine the cooking surface of this pan. And I gotta say that the surface is a little bit rough. It's definitely rougher than my older 12-inch Lodge, but it's not nearly as rough as that Amazon Basics. It may not come across on the screen, but when you run your fingers across both pans, you can definitely tell a difference in that Amazon Basics cast iron. It has a different feel to it, even a little bit different look to it. So I still do prefer the Lodge. I do have one of the 10-inch models myself, and it's a little bit bumpier than the 12-inch, but it's also newer. So what I think happens with these cast irons is that when you get them when they're brand new, they might be a little bit more bumpy than you're expecting, but after you use metal utensils in them for a few years, after you scrub them really heavily with those stainless steel chainmail scrubbers a time or two, cooking them for a year or two, and then season them, I think those peaks kind of get knocked down a little bit, and maybe some of the nooks and crannies get filled in with a little bit of seasoning. So I think they definitely get smoother as you go. Okay, back to the bacon tart. Man, was this thing delicious. The way you make this recipe is you start layering bacon into the 10-inch cast iron skillet. Make kind of a big pinwheel shape there. Make sure you leave enough bacon to overhang the sides. Then you fill it in with potatoes and cheese and herbs and fold that bacon back over. Bake that for a couple of hours. And when you get it out, it's absolutely delicious. So I give that recipe a thumbs up. My one caveat after trying it is that it can get a little bit pricey. You know, bacon is $7, $8 a pound sometimes. 2 pounds of that there. You got your potatoes, you got your cheese. You can easily be in for close to $20 before you even get started. The recipe calls for fresh thyme, fresh sage, fresh rosemary, and fresh tarragon. If you've got those already in your fridge, by all means go ahead and use them. It makes the recipe really delicious. But if you don't, those things can be $3, $4 a bundle. If you go out and buy 4 of those, you're talking about adding another $15 to this recipe. It can get a little bit out of whack on the pricing there. If you have to cut back anywhere, I would say just use dried herbs or whatever you have on hand without going out and buying all that fresh. Did you guys do any shopping for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Thanksgiving weekend? I know I did. The Bouye had a massive sale, 30% off their entire website with free shipping over 69 bucks. I jumped on that to buy a carbon steel wok, which just came in. I've never had a wok before, but when I season carbon steel pans, I always have someone write in and say, will these seasoning directions work for a wok as well? I always have to say, I don't know, I've never owned one. So now with those savings, I decided I would give one a try. I bought the wok and a risotto spoon. $105 normally. Got it for about $74 with the discount and free shipping. Seemed like a pretty good deal. I jumped right on that. A little bird tells me that they're going to have another site-wide sale starting on the 10th. So while we're here, why don't we go ahead and unbag, which is slightly different than unboxing, this wok and see how it looks. Woo! Nice. Dubuyer Mineral B carbon steel 12.5-inch wok. Seems pretty nice. Nice big handle, nice and heavy. Supposed to be 2 millimeters thick. Now right off the bat, one thing I learned about woks is that if you're going to use one on your gas stove, you need a wok ring to support it when you're cooking. This fancy Italian stove, they make one. I had to order one. I think it's coming in from Italy, charging me an arm and a leg for shipping. I'm sure they're right on that. Once that thing comes in, we're going to get this thing cleaned up, seasoned, do a big in-depth wok cooking and review video. Now let's take a look at another new pan. In the last Pancast I did, I mentioned baking steels. They're essentially big slabs of metal you use in your oven, kind of sort of like a baking stone. Well, it turns out a viewer named Bloodgain wrote in and said, did you see that Baking Steel is releasing their own pan now too? It's made by Dubuyer and is shipping this month. I did not realize that, but I got online and went to the Baking Steel site, and it turns out he's correct. Baking Steel is releasing a carbon steel skillet in conjunction with Dubuyer. So I got on there, I ordered one of those, it just came in as well. Let's go ahead and open this thing up. Oh wow. There it is, the Baking Steel Dubuyer combo pan. First thing I notice is that not only is it heavy like any other Dubuyer carbon steel skillet, but this handle. It looks like the same shape as a strip steel handle, but it appears to be made out of stainless steel. So that's pretty interesting. So look for a seasoning, cooking, and review feature on this Baking Steel / Dubuyer pan coming up soon. And one more wrap up on Thanksgiving. I put up a poll question, asked whether you guys cook dressing or stuffing. Turns out 60% of you guys like dressing, which is what my family and I have always had. It seems completely reasonable to cook dressing in a pan rather than cooking stuffing inside a dead bird. I don't cook anything else inside a dead bird. Brussels sprouts, pizza, baked potatoes, cook those in an oven, not inside a dead bird. Which brings up bone broth. Bone broth, everybody likes to talk about bone broth, which sounds a lot better than boiled carcass. Ugh. I can't decide if I like it or not. I don't know. That's going to be the next poll question. What do you guys think? Do you like bone broth or is it disgusting? Who knows? Okay, it is great to be back after holiday traveling, talking to you guys about delicious food and frying pans again. Make sure you get your questions and comments in. I'll do my best to answer those. Look for those big sales coming up. That big Dubuyer one next week. We'll have links to that when it goes live. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time on Uncle Scott's Pancast Podcast.